For more on that hearing, Bruce Heyman served as U.S. Ambassador to Canada from 2014 to 2017. He's in Chicago. Ambassador, good to have you back on the program.
Good to be back, Vashi.
I was just listening to Paul describe that call between the former president and the former vice president and thinking, my goodness, I 5 years ago, or 6 years ago or 7 years, I couldn't have imagined a conversation between a president and a vice president, A, playing out that way, and then B, being made public. What were you thinking as you heard that description?
So I was thinking about Mike Pence. I was thinking about also the time that I took my oath of office to preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States of America against enemies, foreign and domestic. And he had a constitutional obligation in this vote counting process, but yet his boss, the president of the United States, someone he had been loyal to for 4 years, was demanding that he abrogate his duty to the Constitution, violate his oath of office. And that's a heck of a lot of pressure he was under. And yet Mike Pence, through consultation, deliberation, made the decision, which I believe may go down in history as his finest hour, maybe the finest hour for the country, especially during this moment, that he stood up and did what his constitutional obligation was. He verified the votes that Joe Biden was the president and duly elected president of the United States of America.
It's so interesting because, as you say, he did what he was supposed to do. It's not hard when you listen to the description of how much pressure he was under, direct pressure he was under, to imagine the opposite happening. And then the secondary part of that, to think about what would have happened if he hadn't, right? If he hadn't done what the Constitution said he should.
Look, it was even more complicated than that. In the hearing today, we heard how his life was potentially at deep risk. He was 40 feet away from these protesters who were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." And the president was basically tweeting in his own way, kind of a nod of agreement to that, which was unbelievable. And so we got the backstory today. It was like a Law and Order show, but yet this was real time, real stuff.
And what do you think, as you listen to that and reflect on the first two public hearings, the impact at this point on the public has been?
So what did the president know, and when did he know it? And we got a lot of detail at the very beginning. We had this case laid out. But interestingly, what this whole set of hearings have been doing is appealing, I believe, to two categories of people. One, the Justice Department, and two, Republicans. And because Democrats, you know how they feel. They felt this was, the nefarious activity that it was. But to keep it in line, to make it non-political, they used almost exclusively Republican witnesses, almost all these hearings. And so what we're counting on is a decent amount of Republicans who say, you know what, we've had enough of Donald Trump and he can't be elected anymore. And what we need at the Justice Department are people who can look at this carefully and say, maybe there are actual criminal activities. And today we found out the Justice Department asked for all testimony, all hearings, all documentation from the committee to be delivered to them.
What does that tell you?
That tells me that they are in the middle of this investigation and they want to be buttoned up. Witnesses get interviewed in many different ways. They don't want a surprise that maybe a witness said one thing to the House of Representatives that may come out later that they're also talking to, that they're going to use in some type of prosecution. So it looks like they need all these pieces to be completely buttoned up. I'm not an attorney, but that's the way it has been described over the last few days, and today in particular when this announcement came out.
And when you talk about the Republicans who could be potentially reached by what is playing out in public during these hearings, I'm guessing that you're not referring to the kind of diehard MAGA Republicans, but a pool of less MAGA or even old school Republicans. And I'm wondering, from your vantage point and your sort of observations of the current political dynamics in the U.S., how big of a pool you think that is?
So Donald Trump still attracts enough of this pool to scare a number of sitting elected officials to the point where they are paying homage to him, even though I believe in their heart of hearts they know it's the wrong thing to do. They're doing it for their political survival. And so what we need to see is enough of a turn that people are willing to stand up for what we're hearing, the Constitution of the United States, the legitimacy of the presidency, regardless of how your political leanings are, and to, support the country. And so I don't think it takes a lot of movement here. And you go back to Watergate hearings, when I'm old enough to remember those, even though I was young, that for a whole year, Republicans were in denial. But as soon as those tapes came out, boy, they threw him under the bus quickly. I think this hearing may have that same, effect on many Republicans.
Okay, we'll be watching. Thank you very much, Ambassador Heyman. Appreciate your time as always.
It's a pleasure. Be well.
You too. Bruce Heyman served as U.S. Ambassador to Canada from 2014 to 2017. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.